I was the one who always tried. That's probably the best way to start this. I'm Ethan, I'm 31, and if you asked anyone in my family, they'd probably tell you I'm the calm one, the reliable one, or, my personal favorite, the one who doesn't cause trouble. But what they really mean is, Ethan's the one we can walk all over because he won't fight back. And for most of my life, that was true. I let things slide. I kept the peace. I made excuses for people who didn't deserve them. But eventually, even the quiet ones hit a wall. My family isn't evil. They're just exhausting. My dad is the type of guy who shows love through nostalgia, classic rock vinyls, old baseball cards, stories that always start with "back in my day." My mom plays emotional referee in every argument, but always ends up siding with whoever is loudest. And then there's my brother, Josh. 3 years younger, louder, flashier, and somehow always the victim, no matter what mess he causes. If Josh forgets your birthday, it's because he's got so much on his plate. If you forget his, prepare for a week of icy silence and public guilt tripping. And Laura, his wife, is basically his emotional twin. She's the kind of person who will smile while saying the most backhanded thing you've heard all week and then act surprised when you don't thank her for the compliment. For most of our adult lives, I've kept my distance. We do the family dinners, the birthday texts, the occasional group chat memes, but I stopped trying to be close. Until a few months ago. That's when Dad got some news about his hearing. He wasn't going deaf, not completely, but it was starting. Slow degeneration, the kind of thing that sneaks up over years until one day you realize the silence isn't just peace, it's permanent. I remember how small he looked when he told me, like the words were bigger than he expected. And then he said something that stuck with me. I just wish I could hear one more show like I used to. Something loud, something real. It didn't take much to figure it out. His favorite band, an old-school rock group he'd played on loop when I was a kid, was reuniting for a tour. One final tour, they said. No encores. Just one last run before they called it quits for good. And by some miracle, they were doing a show 3 hours away in the city. Front row tickets were insanely expensive, $8.50 each, but something in me said, do it. So I did. I bought 6 of them. Me, Mom, Dad, Josh, Laura, and my Uncle Greg, who basically raised Dad on that music. $6,800. I'm not rich by any means. I freelance in UX design and pick up contract gigs, but I had the savings. I figured, screw it. Some moments matter more than money. I booked the tickets. Told my mom first. She cried. Dad said it was the nicest thing anyone's ever done for him. Josh sent a thumbs up emoji. Laura didn't respond. That should have been the first sign, but I brushed it off. She was always weird about attention when it wasn't hers. Whatever. I let it slide. Weeks passed, and the group chat started buzzing more. Mostly from me. Let's figure out carpooling. Anyone have food allergies for dinner reservations? Thinking about making custom lanyards for fun? Dumb idea, or go for it? Standard stuff. Everyone gave bare minimum replies, but I chalked it up to busyness. Laura had a new job. Josh was doing something in crypto or real estate, depending on the week. Mom was always juggling her book club and pretending she wasn't secretly planning a second wedding anniversary party for a cousin none of us liked. But Dad was excited. He called me twice just to ask what the set list might be. He kept saying, "Can you believe we're really doing this?" Like he couldn't quite let himself get too hopeful. Like something might go wrong. And then, 2 days before the show, I got the text. It was from Josh. No greeting. No punctuation. Just, "We gave your seat to Laura. She actually knows the songs." I read it 3 times. Then once more, slower. I thought maybe I was misreading it. Maybe he meant something else. Maybe he was joking. I waited for a LOLJK or a follow-up. Nothing. Just silence. I checked the group chat. Nothing there either. So I replied, "Cool." That was it. One word. Cool. Because I knew if I said anything more, I'd explode. And they twisted. They always did. If I raised my voice, I was overreacting. If I stood up for myself, I was making everything about me. And somehow, Josh would turn it into a sob story about how I never make Laura feel welcome in the family. But inside, I was shaking. I wasn't even mad about the seat. I was mad about the message behind it. They didn't ask. They didn't explain. They just decided. Decided I was the least important person on that list. That I was optional. Expendable. And the worst part? It wasn't even surprising. I stared at the tickets on my desk. All 6 of them, tucked into a little envelope I was planning to hand to Dad with a smile and a dumb little speech. "Thanks for the music, old man." I had even printed that line on the envelope. Now it just looked pathetic. And that was the moment I realized something. They didn't deserve this. Not the tickets. Not the effort. Not the memory I was trying to build for them. So I made a decision. One they wouldn't see coming. And I didn't tell a soul. Not yet. I didn't sleep much that night. I just laid there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying that text over and over again. "We gave your seat to Laura. She actually knows the songs." The wording stuck to me like gum on the bottom of a shoe. Lazy, careless, entitled. It wasn't just a seat. It was my seat. I bought those tickets. I organized the entire trip. And yet, somehow, I was the one being replaced. Just like that. By morning, the numbness had turned into something heavier. Not quite rage, at least not the loud, throw something across the room kind. It was quieter than that. A simmering heat in my chest. The kind of anger that makes you stop talking, stop texting, and start paying attention to what people really think of you. I didn't respond again. I didn't say a word in the group chat. I didn't call my mom to ask what was going on. I didn't text my dad to see if he knew. I went completely silent. And, unsurprisingly, no one followed up. Not even a, "Hey, Ethan, are you okay with that?" Nothing. The message was clear. My opinion wasn't required. My feelings weren't part of the equation. That day, I worked half-heartedly on a design contract, but my mind kept wandering. What bugged me the most wasn't even Laura. I expected that from her. What got under my skin was Josh. We weren't best friends or anything, but we grew up together. Shared a bedroom for 10 years. Fought over cereal boxes and PlayStation turns. And now? He couldn't even be bothered to ask me first before handing my seat away like it was a free drink ticket at a bar. I started thinking about all the other times. The little things I'd brushed off because that's just Josh. Like how he forgot to pay me back for the Airbnb I covered during our cousin's wedding last summer. Or how he made fun of my car at Thanksgiving, calling it the Uber for single guys, while Laura laughed and clinked her wine glass like he'd said something clever. Or how, when Dad had his minor health scare last year, I was the one who drove him to every appointment, asked all the right questions, kept track of the meds, while Josh showed up once with a smoothie and posted it on Instagram like he was the devoted son of the year. They always gave him a pass. "He's just busy. He means well. Don't take it personally." I've heard every excuse, usually from my mom, who had perfected the art of defending Josh without ever explicitly doing it. She'd just sigh and say, "He's not as thoughtful as you, Ethan. You're different." As if being different was some kind of compliment. It never felt like one. It felt like being dismissed. Like being expected to tolerate everything. 2 days before the concert turned into one. I got no updates, no check-ins, no questions. The group chat had gone back to normal. Memes, reminders about the show, some dumb joke from my uncle about bringing earplugs in case the band actually tries to sing. I kept watching, waiting, wondering if anyone would mention my name. Spoiler, they didn't. So I made a plan. First, I logged into the ticket vendor's website and confirmed that all 6 tickets were still active and under my name. That's the thing people forget about group plans. When one person fronts the cost, they control everything. I hadn't transferred ownership. I hadn't shared QR codes. I hadn't given anyone anything except the idea of going. Legally and practically, the tickets were mine. Next, I called the spa. It was a place I'd been to once with a friend, an upscale, Mountain View resort 2 hours north. Quiet, private, and most importantly, not full of people who thought I was optional. I asked about availability. They had a weekend package, single suite, deep tissue massage, steam room access, all meals included. Pricey, but still cheaper than the concert tickets. I booked it on the spot. Then, I opened the resale tab on the ticket site. It felt surreal, listing them. One by one, each ticket I'd so carefully picked out, each seat in that perfect front row line. I watched the prices climb. Apparently, demand had spiked since the band announced this would be their last city performance. Within hours, all 6 were sold. I got a confirmation email with the payout amount, $7,200. More than what I'd paid. Funny how karma works. I still didn't tell anyone. I wanted the silence to stretch. I wanted them to keep thinking everything was fine, that they'd just see me there. I wanted them to show up to that arena in their overpriced fan merch and smug little attitudes, only to find out they had no seats, no entry, and no idea what went wrong. But something happened that nearly cracked me before I could pull it off. Dad called. It was the night before the show. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, torn. Part of me wanted to decline, let it go to voicemail. But another part, the part that still loved him, still saw the man who taught me how to tie my shoes and grilled burgers every 4th of July. Picked up. "Hey, champ," he said. His voice had that warm, slightly gravelly tone I remembered from childhood. "You excited for tomorrow?" I swallowed. "Yeah," I said. "Should be something." He chuckled. "Can you believe it? Front row. Never thought I'd be that close to the stage. I mean, ever. Greg's been teasing me all week. Says I better not cry during the second encore." He paused. "I might, though." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to be happy for him. I really did. But I couldn't shake the betrayal. I couldn't forget that this was supposed to be our thing. A memory for us. And now it felt like I was just the guy who funded the party but wasn't invited. "Dad," I said, hesitating. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Did you know Josh gave my seat to Laura?" Silence. Longer than it should have been. I thought you were okay with that," he said finally. "Josh said you volunteered." I closed my eyes. "Of course he did." "Right," I said. "Ethan," he added quickly. "If it's a problem, we can fix it. I'll talk to him." "Maybe." "It's fine," I interrupted. "Don't worry about it." "You sure?" "Because if." "I'm sure." He exhaled, uneasy. "Okay. Well, I wanted this to be a good night, you know? For all of us." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Me too." We hung up a minute later. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. That call shook me more than I expected. Not because of Dad's words, but because he didn't question it. Josh had lied, flat out, and no one even checked with me. Not even Dad. That's when it hit me. I didn't matter to them the way they mattered to me. I was the facilitator, not the family. The guy who filled in the gaps, paid the bills, made the calls, but never got the spotlight. And when push came to shove, they believed Josh. Every time. The next morning, I packed my bag. I left my phone charger behind on purpose. One last little act of rebellion. At noon, I checked my email. The resale payment had processed. Money in my account. At 12:03 p.m., I turned off my phone. And I drove. Out of the city. Away from the arena. Up into the hills, toward the spa. Meanwhile, somewhere back home, they were getting ready. Putting on their shirts. Grabbing their little signs. Laughing about how excited they were. And they had no idea what was waiting for them. Or, more accurately, what wasn't. The spa was quiet. Not silent, but peaceful. The kind of quiet that makes you notice the small things. The hum of warm air circulating through the cedar walls. The slow trickle of water from some artfully hidden fountain. The soft click of slippers on polished stone floors. I checked in without much conversation, let them guide me to my room, nodded politely when they asked if I wanted a glass of cucumber water. Once the door clicked shut behind me, I let out a long breath. It was the first real exhale I'd had in days. The room was simple but luxurious. White linens, high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows that opened up to a view of the mountains. I set my bag down on the bench, sat on the edge of the bed, and just let it all hit me. They were probably arriving at the arena right about now. Josh, walking ahead, acting like he was the one who made it all happen. Laura, all dolled up, probably holding onto her ticket like a badge of superiority. Mom, caught between pretending everything was fine and nervously glancing around, wondering if she forgot to remind someone of something. And Dad, standing at the front gates, unaware of the ticking bomb in his pocket. Because that's what those tickets had become. Time-locked evidence of who really held the power, and who they'd cast aside without a second thought. And here I was, miles away, in a bathrobe I didn't deserve, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. That was the part no one tells you about revenge. Even the clean, poetic kind. Even when it's justified. There's a cost. And that cost is doubt. I kept imagining Dad's face. The confusion, the disappointment. The way his voice would crack when he asked what happened, why they couldn't get in. I imagined Mom saying, "Ethan must have misunderstood," even though she knew exactly what had been done. I imagined Josh's face twisting into that performative anger he always used when things didn't go his way. He'd yell, blame me, accuse me of being dramatic, vindictive, selfish. And no matter what the truth was, they'd believe him. Because they always did. That night, I didn't sleep well. I tossed and turned in sheets that felt too smooth. I kept reaching for my phone out of habit, forgetting it was turned off in my bag. I kept checking the time on the room's analog clock, tracking every minute they were probably pacing outside that venue, arguing with security, trying to figure out how 6 front-row tickets had just vanished. And as much as I wanted to feel triumphant, all I felt was empty. It was a hollow sort of victory, like winning a game you never wanted to play. The next morning, I ate breakfast in the lounge. Quiet jazz played overhead. An older couple 2 tables down were celebrating an anniversary. The waiter brought them mimosas. I sipped my black coffee and pretended not to notice the silence of my own table. Then I made a decision. I walked over to the front desk, asked for a charger, and plugged my phone back in. When it powered up, it nearly exploded. 17 missed calls. 43 unread messages. The group chat was chaos. Screenshots. Photos. A blurry shot of Josh holding up a printout, arguing with the security guard. A message from Mom. Ethan, where are you? Please call us. One from Dad. Son, I don't understand what's happening. Are you okay? Josh, of course, had left a string of furious texts. Accusations. Name calling. At one point, he even typed in all caps. You ruined everything. Dad was crushed. That one hurt. I didn't reply. Not yet. I wasn't ready. Instead, I turned off notifications and spent the rest of the day in silence. The massage helped. The sauna helped more. I sat there for half an hour, letting the heat melt everything down to its barest version. The noise, the guilt, the memory of that stupid text from Josh. All of it peeled away in layers of sweat and steam. Somewhere in that stillness, I stopped feeling like a villain. And I started remembering who I was before they convinced me I was always the problem. I stayed one more night. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. I wrote in my journal for the first time in over a year. Not a dramatic manifesto, just thoughts. Memories. Things I'd buried under a lifetime of being the reliable one. I remembered how much I used to love sketching logos for fake companies as a kid. How I used to imagine running a design firm one day. Creating from scratch. Building something that was mine. I wrote down ideas. Brand names. Taglines. Clients I could reach out to again. People who actually respected my work. I wasn't at the bottom anymore. Not quite the top, but somewhere in between. A place I could build from. When I finally drove back to the city, I didn't rush. I took the long way down the mountains. Windows cracked, radio low. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't dreading what came next. I was just ready. I got home Sunday afternoon. My apartment was exactly how I left it. Quiet. Neat. The air a little stale from being closed up for the weekend. I watered my plants. Unpacked slowly. Ate leftover Thai food from the fridge. Then I opened the group chat. They were still talking. Or, rather, had been talking. The last message was from the night before, from Mom. Let's all cool off and talk like adults tomorrow. Tomorrow had arrived. But I didn't message them. Instead, I opened a new tab on my laptop. I clicked on a domain registrar. I bought a website. ethandesigns.co. Simple. Clean. Mine. Then I spent the next 6 hours building it. I dusted off my portfolio, added recent mock-ups, cleaned up old project descriptions. By midnight, I had something I was proud of. Not for my family. Not for revenge. For me. And that's when it hit me. They'd taken so much from me over the years. Time, energy, self-worth. But they never built anything of their own. Not really. They just borrowed. Took. Repurposed. I, on the other hand, still had something they didn't. The ability to create from scratch. The ability to rebuild. Even after hitting rock bottom. That was my edge. And I wasn't done yet. Because the next time they reached out, and they would, I'd have more than just a silence to offer. I'd have a choice. And this time, I wasn't giving them the benefit of the doubt. I was giving them a lesson. But not just yet. First, I had a few more bricks to lay. I didn't reach out that week. Not to Mom. Not to Dad. And definitely not to Josh. I thought maybe they'd show up at my apartment. Try to clear the air, or sit me down for one of those family talks that are less about resolution and more about making sure they feel okay again. But no one came. No calls. No knocks. Just quiet. Which, honestly, suited me just fine. Because I wasn't done healing, but I was done being passive. There's something dangerous about a person who's finally shed the weight of being the family doormat. Not dangerous in a violent way. Dangerous in the sense that they finally see everything for what it really is, and they're not afraid to act. And I was acting. At first, it was little things. I started disconnecting. Unsubscribed from the family group chat. You can do that now. Thankfully, no big announcement, no dramatic exit, just one click. Gone. I muted Mom's weekly just checking in messages. I knew what they really were. Anxious probes to see if I was still angry, without ever addressing why I might be. She never asked what happened at the concert. Never even said thank you for the tickets. Just wanted to move forward. I wasn't moving forward. I was preparing. And preparation, for me, started with something simple, leverage. See, I wasn't interested in public explosions or family-wide shaming. That's Josh's style, emotional fireworks designed to make himself the victim. I wanted something smarter, calmer, permanent. The first step came from a quiet realization. They still thought I needed them. Even after everything, they believed I'd come back. That I'd forgive. That I had to forgive, because what else would I do? Who else did I have? That assumption was my greatest advantage. Because while they sat in their little suburban bubbles, treating me like a misbehaving relative who just needed a cool-off period, I was laying groundwork for something far more meaningful. I dove into my freelance work harder than ever. Rebuilt my portfolio. Reached out to old clients. Picked up new gigs. Within a few weeks, I had more work than I could handle. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to say yes to everything. I raised my rates. Took fewer meetings. Focused on quality. And then came the spark I didn't expect. I was browsing LinkedIn, casually scrolling through updates, when I saw a post from Laura's company. Some lifestyle startup she'd recently joined as their creative strategy lead. They were launching a new branding campaign. The post was vague, just buzzwords and hashtags, but it mentioned something that caught my attention: logo design in collaboration with outside creatives. I clicked the link, scrolled through the site, and there it was. My logo. An old one. Something I designed 3 years ago as a concept for a small travel brand that never got off the ground. I'd posted it to Dribble once, just to showcase typography technique. It was never used commercially, and I never sold the rights. But it was mine, and they'd taken it. I stared at the screen, stunned. It wasn't even altered, just slapped onto their homepage with new colors and some generic tagline. That's when it all snapped into place. Josh and Laura had always taken things that weren't theirs: attention, credit, affection. But this was different. This was theft. Actual theft. And I had proof. I downloaded everything: screenshots, timestamps, archive links. Checked the site metadata, even pulled the post from the company's LinkedIn page. Then I dug deeper. Found Laura's work profile. Read every word of her branding announcement, where she described the new logo as the result of collaborative ideation. Not one mention of me. Not one mention of outside sourcing. Just polished lies. That's when the setup began. I reached out to a friend of mine from university, Maya, a lawyer who specialized in intellectual property. We hadn't talked in a while, but she picked up on the second ring. "Ethan," she said, surprised. "Wow, it's been ages." "Hey," I said, skipping the small talk. "I need your brain." I told her everything. Sent the files. Walked her through the timeline. She was quiet for most of it, only asking clarifying questions here and there. When I finished, she exhaled. "Yeah, that's a solid case," she said. "And if it's being used in a campaign, that's monetary damages on top of copyright violation." I blinked. "Wait, actual money?" She laughed. "Yes, Ethan. You own the design. If they didn't buy the rights and it's not under a license agreement, they're in violation. Plain and simple. Especially if she works for the company and pitched it as her own. That's messy. Messy. Exactly what I wanted. Not for revenge. Not just for revenge. For power. For the first time in my life, I held something they couldn't talk their way out of. Something they couldn't gaslight or guilt trip. Something real. Maya agreed to help me draft a cease and desist letter. Said she'd represent me if it escalated. I offered to pay. She refused. "You helped me get my first client gig," she said. "Call it even." The letter was sharp. Professional. Calm. No threats. Just a direct statement of rights, evidence of ownership, and a demand for immediate removal or licensing negotiation at my rate. I sent it on a Tuesday morning, directly to Laura's company email. 2 hours later, the logo disappeared from their site. 3 hours later, I got a text from Josh. "What the hell, Ethan? You sent a legal letter to Laura's work? Are you serious right now?" I didn't respond. Then came another. "You could have just talked to us. This is low, man. Real low." I stared at the messages. Smiled. Because now they were scrambling. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't chasing them. I was setting the pace. That weekend, Dad finally reached out again. He asked if we could talk over lunch. Just the two of us. I agreed. We met at a quiet diner halfway between my place and theirs. He looked older than I remembered. Not dramatically, but something about his eyes. A weariness. A quiet confusion. He smiled as I slid into the booth. Good to see you, kid. You too, Dad. We ordered. Talked lightly at first. Weather, work, the usual distractions. Then, finally, he leaned forward. Listen, he said. I know things have been rough, and I won't pretend to understand everything that happened. But I want to fix it. I sipped my coffee. Do you? He frowned. Of course I do. Then why didn't you say something sooner? He hesitated. I didn't want to push. Your mom said you needed space. She also said I volunteered my seat. He looked down. Didn't respond. That concert was supposed to be a gift, I said. Something special. And they hijacked it. No one asked me. No one even thanked me. They just decided. He nodded slowly. I know. I waited. But he didn't defend them this time. He just sat there. Let it hang. That was progress, in its own small way. We talked a bit more. Nothing resolved, really. But the tone had shifted. Less denial. More listening. And when we stood to leave, he put his hand on my shoulder. You don't have to forgive anyone, he said. Not until you're ready. Maybe not ever. Just don't disappear, okay? I nodded. But in my head, I wasn't disappearing. I was just repositioning. Because now, the stage was set. They'd taken my kindness for weakness. And they had no idea what was coming next. It didn't happen all at once. That's what made it perfect. There wasn't some explosion, no screaming match at a family dinner, no slammed doors or police reports. It was quieter than that. Slower. More permanent. It began with an email. A very polite, very formal response from Laura's company's legal team, requesting a license to continue using my design. They offered a standard freelance fee, lowball, of course, and a non-disclosure clause to avoid unnecessary attention. I declined. Then I countered. $15,000. No NDA. No attribution required, but a permanent license to use the logo if they wanted to keep it. A week later, they accepted. And just like that, I made more from Laura's theft than she'd made from pitching it. The money wasn't the point, but it did feel poetic. I used a portion of it to finally start something I'd been putting off for years, my own design collective. Not a big agency, just a curated team of freelancers I trusted. People I'd worked with over the years, talented folks who, like me, were used to being overlooked while louder, less talented people took the spotlight. We called it Quiet Works. It took off faster than I expected. We specialized in branding for startups and nonprofits. Clean, honest work without buzzwords. Word spread fast. By the end of the first quarter, we had 5 clients, a growing wait list, and a reputation for delivering on time without the typical agency nonsense. I didn't need my family's approval anymore. I'd built something better. But I wasn't quite done with them yet. Because while I was rising, they were starting to crack. It started with Josh. Apparently, Laura hadn't told him the full story. He found out about the settlement after one of her coworkers made a snide comment at a party about her paying hush money to her boyfriend's brother. They fought. Loudly. Publicly. He called me the next day, voice tight with rage, like I owed him something. You made her look stupid, Ethan. You embarrassed us. No, I said calmly. She embarrassed herself. I just sent a letter. You could have come to me. I did, I cut in. The second you texted me that you gave my seat away, I came to you. And you treated me like I was nothing. There was silence. Then he said, quietly, you know Dad was heartbroken, right? He should be, I replied. And so should you. Then I hung up. That was the last time I spoke to Josh. Things got quieter after that. He stopped texting. Mom stopped trying to reconnect. Dad, to his credit, kept reaching out. Little things, sending me old vinyls he found, tagging me in articles about design. He even sent a long email one night apologizing for not stepping in sooner. I wanted to keep the peace, he wrote. But I realized I kept peace by sacrificing you. That's not peace. That's silence. And I'm sorry. It didn't fix everything. But it was the first real apology I'd ever received from anyone in my family. And it mattered. As the months passed, I saw them less and less. I wasn't invited to family gatherings, or if I was, it was through a passive, you can come if you want message sent days before. I declined. I had better things to do. Real friends. Clients. Projects that fulfilled me. A team that saw me. But fate has a funny way of circling back. One night in early fall, I got a call from my Uncle Greg, the same one who was supposed to go to the concert with us. He'd always been a bit of a floater in the family, more observant than involved. He asked if I wanted to grab a beer. When we met up, he didn't waste time. "You know," he said, sliding into the booth, "you might be the only one in the family who actually changed things." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, "you finally stood up, made noise, didn't just take it, and they're still spinning from it." I didn't respond. He went on. "Laura's work? That little IP issue nearly cost her the promotion she was angling for. Josh, his little real estate hustle hit a wall. Got called out for using company funds to finance a private trip. Internal audit. Messy stuff." I took a slow sip of my beer. "Not saying you caused it," he added, "but you didn't let them walk over you. And it's refreshing." I didn't feel smug. I didn't gloat. I just nodded. Because he was right. For the first time in my life, I hadn't let it slide. I hadn't swallowed my pride to keep the family from falling apart. I let it fall. And in the wreckage, I'd built something better. The real closure came 6 months later. My parents hosted a small dinner for Dad's birthday. Not a big party, just a private thing at their house. I got a last-minute text from Mom. "We're having cake tonight for Dad, if you want to stop by." I thought about ignoring it, but something in me said to go. So I did. When I walked in, they all looked surprised. Josh was there. Laura wasn't. Mom smiled nervously. "We weren't sure you'd come." I nodded. I almost didn't. Dad came over, gave me a hug. "Glad you did, son." We ate. Talked. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either. Just civil. And then, at one point, Josh looked at me. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He just said, "You really sold the tickets, huh?" I looked him dead in the eye. "I gave you everything," I said, "and you replaced me without a second thought. So yeah, I sold them, and I don't regret it." He didn't respond. Didn't argue. Didn't apologize either. But he looked down. And for once, he didn't try to twist the story. That was enough for me. I left before dessert. Hugged Dad. Nodded at Mom. Didn't say a word to Josh. And when I stepped outside, into the crisp air of that quiet evening, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because I'd won, but because I didn't need their version of me anymore. I had my own. And it was stronger, wiser, untouchable. So no, I didn't get to see that concert. But I did get my peace. And they got the silence they once wished I'd give them. Only now, it was permanent.